Far Sight's first podcast series. In this podcast series, we aim to delve into the matters of international relations, Nepal's economic diplomacy, regional cooperation, and South Asian geopolitics with as much depth as possible, along with talking about foundational understanding within these broader themes. Our first guest today is Mr. Gaurab Shumsher Thapa. Gaurab is an analyst, researcher in the field of international relations and holds an MA in International Relations and Diplomacy from Tribhuvan University. Thapa has published various articles related to international relations for international platforms including Asia Times, South Asian Voices, and East Asia Forum, where he also acts as a reviewer of articles. His major areas of interest include foreign policy of Nepal vis-a-vis India, China, and the US, geopolitics, and diplomatic history of Nepal. Welcome to our first series of podcast, Gaurav, and thank you so much for accepting our invite. I'll start with a pretty basic question. What is international relations? And if we could slightly, delve into its history as well, as briefly as possible.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank the Farsight Nepal team for allowing me to appear on your podcast. International relations basically is the state of affairs as the states they deal with each other. The relation that is a discipline that defines the relations between states. And of late, it not only defines the relations between state, but it also defines the relationship between state and the people. So this international relations, it started as a distinct academic field more than 100 years ago. Otherwise, it used to be a part of the broad subject of political science. So considering that, international relations has come a long way, and basically the nation-state system, it is considered to have been formally started after the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. So after that treaty, the concept of state as a country, as a state, was more distinct and more strong. And then the primary objective at that time was thought to be the maximization of power. The states, the primary aim that was thought was to expand their territory, expand their control, and control over territory as well as the people. So having started from there, then in the start of the 20th century, in the advent of the World War, so the concept of statehood became even more stronger, and that led to conflict between states. So within that, then the field of international relations can be distinctly divided into, among many, two schools of thoughts. And one is the realist school of thought, and one is the liberalism. There is a liberal school of thought. So as I mentioned just now, the advent of the First World War led to the rise in the idealist and the liberalist thought. Otherwise, the classical realist assumption was based on the human nature, and a lot of theorists, including Hobbes, they talked about the state of nature, and the human nature is to dominate, and they talked about animus dominandi, that is, the basic nature of humans is to desire to dominate, desire to gain power, desire to control one over the other. So based on that premise, theorists like Mearsheimer later on, they expanded the classical realist perspective into neo-realistic theories. So in that sense, they talked about the distinct nature of international order that is anarchic in nature. They talked about anarchy. anarchy here in the IR parlance, the international relations parlance, doesn't mean a chaos or something. It underscores the absence of one supreme global power or something that controls the order. So in the absence of that, the neorealist perspective says that the states, they try to maximize their power. And based on that assumption, whereas the liberalist school of thought says that it focuses on interdependence. So whereas the realist school talks about desire for power, struggle, and insecurity, the liberalist school of thought talks about interdependence, cooperation, etc. So these two distinct fields have gained prominence and in parallel among different circumstances over the history. And geopolitical scenario after the Second World War also totally changed. So in that sense, the world order was established into two distinct ideologies. So one was led by the United States, the other was led by the Soviet Union. So during those times also, the states, although during the Cold War era, any sort of war didn't take place among two superpowers, but the world was totally divided into two blocks. So that led states to maximize their power as well as align themselves in different blocks. So during that time, then the concept of non-alignment also came. So certain countries, certain leaders, they didn't want to align with either of the blocks. And few leaders like Nehru and Tito and few other from Africa, leaders from Ghana and from Egypt. So they decided to form a different bloc that would not align with any of the powers. And Nepal, since beginning, has also played an important role in the non-alignment movement. So the evolution of international relations in that sense, after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, that led to a new era of globalization. So after that also, although it was said by many scholars, including Francis Fukuyama, this is the end of history, that is, such hegemonic power may not arise ever, and the total liberalist school will dominate the international order. So that was a thought of after the era of globalization started. But as we can see, over a course of time, over a period of around more than 30 years, so such perspective cannot be seen in isolation, because idealism is one thing, idealist perspective is one thing, but situations from time to time differ. So if you ask me, the realist perspective is still, strongly dominant in this world and in this era. And if you see the current global order, even though Soviet Union is not there anymore as a superpower, so China's meteoric rise, countering the only superpower at the moment, the United States, has led to a different scenario in the international order. So if we see that, then we can say that the scenario is, the international relations scenario at the moment is also very, we can be very skeptical about what may happen next. So in that sense, so it's quite unpredictable. International relations is never a static thing. It always is in a state of flux, if you can see by the events that have taken place in history.
So what you mean to say is that because we have reached a highly globalized era today, which is the core of the liberalist approach, and which has also resulted in such a stronger international interdependence, which was not there earlier between the two superpower countries, the US and the Russia. But now Now, let's see the trade flows between China and the US, and this economic interdependence has been playing the role of a force of balance in balancing these two forces, right?
Yes, naturally, that is very true. Because earlier, if we see, the politics used to drive economy. So now, if you see, the economic activities drive politics, because everything is so intertwined, everything is so interrelated and interdependent, that even the two primary competitors at the moment in the world, the United States and China, they are also dependent on so many things in the economic parlance. And considering that no one can exist in isolation. So even if the United States says that it can bypass China, or for that matter, even if China says that it can bypass the United States and align with so many other countries, so but their own economic relations is one of the biggest balances, as you've already said that. So that has also that those sort of factors also inhibit the chances of large-scale conflicts or war in this current era.
That's an interesting account of international relations. Can you also share a glimpse into the history of Nepal's international relations?
Yeah, Nepal is, as we all know, Nepal is one of the oldest countries in the world. So in that sense, so if we talk about the modern history of Nepal, so Nepal, as we can see that, as we all know, that Nepal is located in a very crucial geostrategic location in South Asia. So between two giant powers, India and China. So being a small state between two big states as well as their rivals, competitors rather. So it's always been a struggle of existence for Nepal since history. Even if we see, while we talk about so many scholars, international Western scholars, so our own, we can seek a lot of inspiration from our very homegrown theories, if we can theorize what our earlier leaders have said. For example, Prithvinarayan Shah, so he was a master strategist. So some of his views and theories can be correlated in the parlance of international politics or international relations. For example, he had the scenario in which he sort of unified Nepal. So he made a correlation between of Nepal, saying that Nepal is a yam between two boulders. So that example or that illustration is still significant in certain ways, although it's been so many years, more than 250 years since he made that comparison, but still the scenario has not changed much, in the sense that although the struggle for existence may not be still there, but the certain level of insecurities or certain level of dilemmas are still there. So in that sense, yes, Nepal has come a long way in international relations theory, practice also. And if we think about Nepal's more recent history, so let's say Nepal became a member of UN in 1955. So since then, Nepal has been one of the, initially it played a big role in UN, despite the Soviet bloc not allowing Nepal to be a member. But during that time, the leaders of Nepal, they really projected Nepal's image despite so many difficult circumstances. And Nepal has been a member of the UN, non-permanent member of UN Security Council twice, although the last was in 88, 89. And Nepal's biggest plus point in international relations at the moment, maybe through Nepal's peacekeeping missions, where Nepal is the second largest contributor of troops at the moment. So Nepal has also been able to project its image despite its economic backwardness, but through other means, Nepal has played a vital role in securing world peace. So, in that sense, Nepal's diplomatic activities of late can be distinctly divided into two or three scenarios. One, as we said, the multilateral approach, primarily with the United Nations, and in that sense also the peacekeeping missions. That is one thing, and Nepal's relations with in the multilateral other forums, for example, regional forums. Nepal, for the establishment of SAARC, Nepal played an important role. Although SAARC at the moment is in limbo, but still Nepal's role is really commendable in the establishment and the movement of SAARC, and Nepal's bilateral relations. So bilateral relations, Nepal, as we, it's quite obvious that Nepal's relations is majorly concerning between two of its immediate neighbors, India and China. So on the economic and political front, we've always been more interacting or more dependent on India rather than China. That is also defined by history, geography, linguistic, religious, other sort of activities. And China, on the other hand, although we have got ancient relations with China, the ease of access is not as good as with India. So in that sense, our relations with China have become more political in nature, although economic relations have also flourished over the time. Nepal is party to the Belt and Road Initiative with China, but still our more than 80% of trade is with and through India. So the ease of access and geographic proximity makes Nepal's dealings with India more easier. And Nepal has relations with good relations with its major development partners, including the United States, and the US has played an important role in Nepal's development since we had relations with them, formal diplomatic relations with them since 1947. So with the US now in this regional scenario, the US has also, as we are all aware, as we have seen, the US is also quite interested and influential in Nepal at the moment. So as we are all aware that we are party to the MCC, the Millennium Challenge Cooperation Compact, and so many other things which with the US which we have been dealing with, including economic cooperation at the political level as well as in the military training, etc. So in that sense, Nepal's relations obviously is has to do more with its immediate neighbors. That is one thing, but Nepal's horizon of relations has expanded over a period of time, and its relations with other Western countries as well as the labor destinations. So that has also been of primary concern over the last 20 or 30 years. So yeah, in that sense, we can say that Nepal's Nepal's geopolitical location makes it more, I wouldn't say susceptible, but more the major powers or the global powers are more interested in Nepal because of its geopolitical location. So that is also true.
Nepal's geostrategic location has always been there for its immediate neighbors. But was it also the case for the rest of the power blocks then, or is it in just recent history, after China's emergence and the fact that India is also gradually catching up?
Yeah, I would say that it was always there. Because if you see that earlier, China and India were always there, right? Yeah. But at the time, the British East India Company was there. So the British, Nepal, and that Chinese or Tibetan connection was always there. So that now, if you say that the US is more involved in Nepal's or interested in Nepal's affairs, at the time the British who were ruling India were party to such geopolitical influence. So in that sense, we can say that it's not a new phenomenon that we are facing, but Nepal has navigated such scenario since history. So I think it's not a new phenomenon for Nepal.
We keep on hearing that international relations charted new heights during the time of King Mahendra. Although as a ruler his regime has had several drawbacks, many also consider him as an intelligent leader. Can you highlight some of the key and prominent international relations exercise or practices post 50s? Can we slightly delve into that?
It's unfortunate that two great leaders of that time, I would say King Mahendra and B.P. Koirala, they existed at the same time. So they both loved their country. So it's just that King Mahendra later on diverted through a different path by demolishing the democratic setup. But that doesn't mean his contribution in the foreign policy realm can be overlooked. Similarly, B.P. Koirala, he was a great visionary leader. His decision to recognize Israel, in spite of geopolitical constraints and influence, is still considered an example of Nepal's proactive approach in international relations. So even India had not recognized, so we are the first country in South Asia to recognize Israel. So due to that also he faced, it is said that he had to go through so many things. So Nepal is not, we hear many people say that Nepal is very inactive or doesn't play proactive role. But if we see that era, Nepal has always been proactive, and Nepal, as I said earlier, has been a very important actor in the non-alignment movement. So after BP's exile, then King Mahendra took the foreign policy in his own hands, and during his time also the basic simple example, just the construction of the East-West Highway or the construction of the Kodari Highway connecting Nepal with Tibet, China. So these two are very simple examples, but they carry significant symbolism or meaning in international relations, because we didn't have connectivity. So we are talking about connectivity through train or railway network at the moment, but to connect the two distinct geographical regions through the East-West Highway and through the North-South road link. So that is just a simple example, but yet very symbolic in nature of connecting, of having balance in the relations also. So, and another example is that his overall design or overall vision of trying to protect the national interests of Nepal in spite of so many constraints from the southern neighbor at that time. So the way he handled or navigated those geopolitical hurdles by establishing relations with even Western powers, even at that time, even the Soviet Union, the ally of India at that time, and still he had even good relations with the Soviets also. So he was a master strategist, and he really knew how to balance relations so that our relations or our national interests could be secured. So although his undemocratic leanings can be treated in a different way, but his actions for securing, for promoting or projecting the national interests of Nepal is really commendable, I would say.
Now compared to that era, how do you view our recent practices in IR and managing geopolitics of the day? In fact, now situations have changed further due to new variables like advancement in technology, climate change, and all that.
Constants would always remain constants as they are constants, but the variables, as you said, change a lot. So technology, science, and even cyber security, or now the hottest topic maybe AI, artificial intelligence. These are so many variables that have appeared not only in international relations but in other fields also. So constantly we have to upgrade our diplomatic efforts, or we have to refine our foreign policy objectives according to the changing times. So if we see of the current, after let's say the advent of the Republican order in Nepal, lot of foreign influence or foreign meddling, we have seen that. Obviously, in an interconnected world, it is not possible to stay in isolation. But what level of interference or influence you want to give depends on how the domestic politics plays in Nepal. It's often said that foreign policy is also an extension of the domestic policy. So if the domestic politics is stable and the leaders know their ground, keep their ground, the scope of foreign interference is automatically reduced. But if your home is not in order, so obviously we are allowing other players to play in. So Nepal at the moment has a lot to do because new variables have come up. We have to deal not only with our neighbors, which have taken a giant leap in their economic statuses compared to what they used to be in even 30 years ago. So after 1990 or 1991, after the end of the Cold War and start of globalization, both our neighbors have reached miles. But whereas we, being so closely associated with them, have not yet been able to reap the benefits. So that also depends on the desire of the leaders, the policy makers, how we want to reorient or use our foreign policy tools or our diplomatic efforts for securing our own national interests rather than serving the interests of others, or not being able to maximize the benefits that we might be able to do.
Are there any novel efforts in recent times that you can recall? Or is it just limited to continuity of what was initiated back in the days, such as peacekeeping force or even the formation of SARC, although it is dysfunctional now?
Obviously, we talked about a lot of issues, but the one that may be distinct at the moment that enhances Nepal's role, because we have to find what the plus points are. So this Nepal's role in UN peacekeeping really increases our TRP in that sense. So, but at the same time, we being in such a crucial geostrategic location, we can also be proactive in our own regional efforts also. So, but that has been lacking. Nepal currently we are in the chair of SARC, but SARC, due to the differences between India and Pakistan, it's almost in a limbo. So that has provided us with an opportunity, at least provided us with an opportunity to be proactive and try to convince them. But I don't know why they are not trying to. The leaders are not trying to be proactive, or they're not trying to put efforts. Maybe they don't want to antagonize their, big neighbors. So that sort of things, one has to, the leadership has to really set a vision and fix a target. So where they want to focus their policies. So Nepal can also host so many, because Nepal has always been known as a peace-loving country, right? So we talk about we are the land of Buddha and all. So we can organize so many dialogues, because climate change, Nepal, in the climate change agenda also we can advocate. So there are so many things which we can advocate, and even the geopolitical agenda, the security dilemma that has been taking place in the world, we can set into motion a lot of other dialogues. So, but for that we need to be proactive. Geography has given us that opportunity because we are located between two rivals at the same time competitors. So we should be able to maximize that our geolocation for our own benefit. So we can, being a small state doesn't mean that we can't be proactive. We have been proactive in the earlier past also. So there's a lot of avenues in which we can be proactive, but it all depends on the policies or the vision of the leaders. But having said that, we are so much engrossed in managing our own domestic politics that has been unstable since I don't know when. But we are always yearning for that. Yeah. So that sort of the situation has not allowed us to cross that barrier or transcend that boundary in envisaging or thinking about other things that might enhance Nepal's image in a different way in the global stage.
Mountains were always there. Buddha has always been there. Recent time, India's initiatives the way they have been able to exercise, not exercise, the leverage yoga or their film industry, Bollywood, into making it as a soft power for themselves. Two type of initiatives हामीले खासै सुरु नगरेको हो कि कुनै पनि किसिमको. Are there such low hanging fruits that you can particularly say, okay, these might, किनकि at the end this national interest एउटा soft power भन्ने कुरा पनि international relations मा एकदमै important कुरा हो. त्यस्तो चीजमा चाहिँ हामीले कहाँ फोकस गर्न सक्छौँ होला immediately?
Soft power मा त हाम्रो जस्तै as you already said अब पहिलेदेखि कुरा हैन, natural scenic beauty, बुद्ध सबै हामी कुरा त गरिरहेछौँ. So त्यसलाई चाहिँ नि translate, we haven't been able to translate that into our own benefit. त्यसलाई maximize गर्ने पनि, maximize त पुरै छोड, त्यसलाई चाहिँ नि हामीले translate normally पनि गर्न सकेका छैन. The initiative लिने त it all depends on the leadership and the political structure. कुनै पनि चीजमा चाहे डोमेस्टिक पोलिटिक्समै भनौँ चाहे इन्टरनेसनल पोलिटिक्समा केही कसैले के भन्छ भनेर कुरेर बस्ने कि आफूले चाहिँ नि इनिसिएटिभ लिने अथवा कुन चीजमा फोकस गर्ने. सो त्यसमा पनि वी आर इकोनोमिकली, अनलेस वी राइज इकोनोमिकली, सो आई थिंक दैट इज अल्सो इनहिबिटिङ आवर एम्बिसन टु बी मोर प्रोएक्टिभ जस्तो लाग्छ. किनभने अरू कन्ट्रीहरू त्यो अनुसारले झन् पावरफुल हुँदै गइरहेछ इन टर्म्स अफ यु से इकोनोमिक अर वाट एभर. मिलिट्रीले त पहिलेदेखि नै थिएन. सो हामी चाहिँ नि त्यो पास्टको कुरा गर्दैनौँ, तर नयाँमा चाहिँ नि वी हेभन्ट बिन एबल टु म्याक्सिमाइज आवर ओन सफ्ट पावर्स, त्यो पनि. सो हाम्रो अब यस्तो यहाँ त क्लाइमेटै पनि क्यान बी नि, वी क्यान अफर टुवर्ड्स सो मेनी कन्फरेन्सेस अर डायलग्स. यहाँ त एउटा हब बनाउन सकिन्छ नि. सो त्यो पनि कुराहरू छ. बट त्यसलाई चाहिँ नि गर्ने त्यो भिजन र त्यो स्ट्राटेजिज अर द्याट सर्ट अफ थिङ्किङै पनि वी हेभन्ट बिन एबल टु डु द्याट एन्ड वी जस्ट बिटिङ अराउन्ड द बुस जस्तो कुरा.
So then we are just completely focused on managing our domestic politics.
Yeah, so that has also led to, that has resisted our efforts to expand the horizon. यिनै हामी धेरै रुमल लिइरहेपछि अगाडि त्योभन्दा बाहिर निस्किनै सकेका छैनौँ. सो आवर डोमेस्टिक पोलिटिक्स इज अलवेज इन अ स्टेट अफ फ्लक्स. इभन आफ्टर this new constitution, everyone thought, okay, this is the last thing. So after this, everything is going to stabilize. And then we are going through the road of prosperity, economic development भन्ने कुरा सुनेको थियौँ. तर त्यो अनुसारको हुन सकेन नि, भइरहेको छैन. Although we have to look through the positive lens, but because you see, as you said, we talked about variables and constants. Constants will always be there. We will always remain sandwiched between our two neighbors. That's geography is never going to change. Through that, we need to find our own innovative ways to maximize our interests. And other global powers will always have interest in our affairs. That is also, we cannot avoid that. So we have to, we have to enhance our own skills. We have to make the foreign ministry stronger. The leaders have to be abreast of the latest developments. They have to be confident in dealing with their counterparts. The negotiations should be for our own benefit. And in economic terms, we talk a lot about hydropower these days. So that if we can translate that to our own benefit, then our standing, while dealing with others or how others view us will also be different. So unless we sort of put our house in order, unless the politics is stable, unless the leaders are committed, unless we reduce the level of corruption that's taking place, that takes place in our country, the others will also not view us in that light. Others won't take us seriously. So for even projecting our own image, we have to be strong from within and put up a united front. And in especially in terms when we talk about foreign policy, it doesn't change with every government, usually. So the foreign policy is not run by just one leader or in the whim of one leader. It's a set of policies to secure our own interests, national security, that is applied by a state. And based on our own practice, we sometimes tend to tilt towards the south or towards the north. So that won't help us. We have to stick to our own standing.
You mentioned foreign policy. What is foreign policy and what should it look like?
The basic tenets of foreign policy are enshrined in the Constitution itself. So some of the guiding principles of our foreign policy are the principles of non-alignment, following the principles of Panchsheel, following the UN Charter, following the international law, and following the norms of world peace. So these are some of the basic tenets of our foreign policy that are enshrined in the Constitution itself. And the different foreign policy practices done so far, or the diplomatic practices or the policies, are based on these guidelines only. So one cannot deviate from the basic tenets of foreign policy that are enshrined in the Constitution. But in practice, obviously, whatever is laid in the theory is not always applied. So in certain events, we might have been portrayed as if we have tilted to we have taken sides. Whereas the principle of non-alignment, for example, doesn't mean that you just sit idle. The essence of non-alignment, as I understand, or what I advocate, is that putting forth your independent stance in international affairs. So, you are not aligning with any power, but at the same time, it's not that you are staying passive or you are just staying aloof. It doesn't mean that. So it means taking independent stances on certain international issues. So a recent example, Nepal supported the Ukraine in the UN. So and criticized Russia's efforts in annexing certain parts of Ukraine. And many observers here said that why did Nepal do that? We should have abstained or whatever. But being located in such a crucial geopolitical location between two mighty powers that have antagonistic relations with each other, and when one country annexes the independent territory of another country, so it is always right for one country to support the country whose territory has been annexed. So Nepal took that stance in the UN based on this philosophy, as I believe. And I don't think it's valid to criticize that Nepal didn't follow the non-aligned treaty. It should not have aligned with this power or that power. Doesn't mean, because Nepal took an independent stance on certain issues that arose due to the actions of a certain state. So that should not be seen in isolation. Foreign policy should not be a thing that changes with every change in government. त्यो त नेपालको चाहिँ हिस्टोरिकल हाम्रो चाहिँ स्ट्यान्डिङ, हाम्रो रिलेसन्स चाहिँ विथ नेबर्स र अरू मेजर पावर्सदेखि लिएर हामीलाई के बेनिफिट हुन्छ त्यो हिसाबमा लिने. अब मोरओभर दिस डेज वी हेभ टु कन्सिडर so many migrant Nepalese who are working in different countries in the Gulf as well as in other countries. So त्यो किसिमको फरेन पोलिसीले उनीहरूको प्लाइटलाई पनि it should take care of that. And as we discussed earlier, we should be updated with so many technological advancements. So foreign policy now should be updated to tackle the threats posed by cybercrime or the artificial intelligence को कुराहरू. So obviously new variables आउने बित्तिकै त्यसमा अपडेट चाहिँ नि हुनुपर्छ. सो अब यस्तो कुराहरूलाई चाहिँ अहिले कन्सिडर गरिरहेको छैन फरेन पोलिसीकै अथवा नेसनल सेक्युरिटीकै पर्सपेक्टिभबाट. But these sort of things should also be now incorporated. We've seen a lot of talk about climate change. So foreign policy climate change पनि एउटा चाहिँ इन्टरनेसनल रिलेसन्सकै एउटा चाहिँ नि पार्ट जस्तै पनि हो कि त्यो पनि इस्यु अहिले चाहिँ एकदम ग्लोबली नै that is highlighted and it's of concern. So त्यो हिसाबमा यस्ता इस्युहरू आइरहन्छ नि त नयाँ नयाँ कुराहरू. So we need to adapt and we need to embed such issues in our policies and practices. Otherwise we lag behind that. भइसकेपछि we should not be reactive. भइसकेपछि केही गर्ने भन्ने होइन कि. सो त्यसलाई नै कसरी हुन्छ. And our policy makers, our bureaucrats, our diplomats should be well acquainted with all these things.
What is national interest and how do you determine it?
National interest is a very, it's a relative term. National interest is not, you cannot just measure. So simply national interest is what secures your interests, basically. The country's interests that are taken care of, that are not hampered by external factors. And whatever you can secure by increasing the elements of your national power. The national power will have so many elements. So if you enhance your national powers so that they are oriented to secure your interests. So in that sense, national interest can be taken as the thing that can be secured by utilizing all elements of your national power. So national power has so many elements, maybe the economic side of it, the political side of it, even population or whatever, the manpower, that is also the natural resources. These are all examples of national power. So as you enhance your national power, your national interests are more secure. So the enhancement of national power will lead to securing your national interests. So when all the elements of national power are secured, so your national interest will also automatically be secured. So that means we have to, gain strength in all the different aspects of statecraft.
Coming to SAARC now, Nepal had taken quite a proactive role in the formation of SAARC. What has happened to it now?
SAARC was started with a very novel objective of regional cooperation. So that's the essence of SAARC. And this region, the South Asia region, is connected through culture, language, and a lot of commonalities in the religious aspect also, and geographic contiguity. And so many of, almost all the countries are, sort of, what you can say is interrelated or in culturally also. But the big power rivalry of certain states, India-Pakistan rivalry, has sort of subdued all the benefits that we could have taken. And unless the SAARC Charter itself hinders the without the consent of all the members, it can the summits or the other things cannot happen. So when two of the biggest countries, the member states, are not in unison in their view of how to go about things, this association is in a limbo. Whereas a lot could have been achieved through this association, and in parallel so many other initiatives have come. For example, BIMSTEC and other multilateral forums have come up. Even within the SAARC countries, the concept of BBIN has come up. So, but in terms of SAARC and the role played by Nepal in its formation, I personally feel that SAARC should be revived and it should play a big role in the regional cooperation. And India being the largest country in terms of whatever size, geography, economy, and what military might, whatever. So it should play a proactive role in trying to revive the SAARC. But as we see, India seems little interested in doing this. But the effort of Nepal and other countries in the region, the small, maybe Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, Maldives, they should try to convince both the rivals to cooperate with each other, so that this regional association, which has a long history, can also flourish and it can connect people and as well as economy, and for the benefit of the larger people in the region.
So there's one window of opportunity when Nepal can really take again another proactive role.
And as I said earlier, we are the current chair of SAARC, and that itself allows us to be more proactive. But due to certain factors or influences, Nepal has not taken place. Would Nepal have taken such initiative earlier? Yes, maybe, I think so. But as of now, we see very limited role of Nepal, even being the chair of the SAARC.
What is Panchsheel?
Panchsheel basically is the 5 principle of coexistence. So you do not, it talks about, so Panchsheel also it has roots in Buddhism. But the basic tenets of Panchsheel would be non-aggression, so respecting each other's existence. So when we talk about international relations, respecting each other's territorial integrity, not interfering in others' internal affairs. So this is idealistic thought, and it talks about mutual cooperation. So Panchsheel is basically a very idealist concept, a novel concept that talks about live and let live.
Can you give us any examples of any of the South Asian countries which have demonstrated a very proactive international relation exercise in recent history?
We can see how India successfully conducted this G20 their meet, and India's expertise in conducting global events. So now it's the current chair of G20. So India, and especially with Narendra Modi as Prime Minister, it has taken India's image as personal style of leadership has also helped even enhancing the country's image. So he's taken very seriously by world leaders, and his style of leadership and to go with the level of progress India is making. So so these two things are matching. So his style of leadership is trying to project India's image in global arena is in unison with the India's pace of development. So the biggest example would be India taking a global leadership stage, and even in this AUKUS, the regional military initiative. So India, although the US is trying to pull India to its against China in that that bloc, so it has dealt very diplomatically, not antagonizing its immediate neighbor China, with which India has a lot of economic activity, relations, but at the same time letting China know that it won't tolerate any aggression. So balancing act. So India has done in a very good way, and in the Ukraine crisis also we can see the Russia-Ukraine war. So the Russia is India's traditional ally, whereas with the US, its relations are fledgling with each passing year. So India doesn't want to antagonize Russia. At the same time, it wants to have good relations with the US. So the balancing act of India in that sense is really appreciable.
But India is a big power right now, right? Especially economic power. Other than India, if you look into rest of the South Asian countries like Sri Lanka and Pakistan or Bangladesh, everybody has their own now at this point of time. All of them have their political constraints and economic constraints as well. But can we think of any such, again, a very proactive international relation exercise in recent time that Nepal can take lessons from?
Well, if we talk about economic prosperity, so if we see the Bangladesh's rise over the last 20 years, so it has overtaken Pakistan and it's the second largest economy in South Asia. So we can say that Bangladesh with its own, because if you have noticed also, Bangladesh, the domestic politics of Bangladesh was very unstable. But over the period of the last decade or so, we haven't seen so much of trouble in Bangladesh. So due to that stability, I think it has been able to reach this level of economic prosperity or growth, I would say, in South Asia, overtaking Pakistan and doing well. Although a lot of things are yet to be put in order there also, but simply seeing their economic growth, they have come a long way. So that can be an example.
The conclusion is that the house has to be in order first.
Yeah. So it's if we think about it, it's anyway, right? आफ्नो घर ठेगानमा भएन भने अरूले गर्छ नि. आफू ठिक हुनु पर्यो, आफ्नो स्ट्यान्स भन्न सक्नु पर्यो.